Hello, everyone. This is Vincent Picciolo, host of the msuwma podcast. We have a really exciting episode planned for you today. We recently had Joe Johnson. Joe is the CEO at Vade Nutrition, which is one of the fastest growing nutritional supplement companies in the world. And if you recognize that name, it is because he and his company both appeared on Shark Tank. Joe is also an MSU alum, where he graduated with a degree in finance and was also the captain of the MSU wrestling team. In today's conversation, we talk about his entrepreneurial journey, the entrepreneurial mindset, as well as his appearance on Shark Tank, and so much more. Stay tuned. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the msuwma podcast. I am here with Joe Johnson. Joe, thank you so much for being on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us a little bit about, let's start off. Tell us a little bit about your background and what your career has looked like after graduating from MSU.
Yeah, so actually I'm going to start before going to MSU.
Yeah.
Just to give a little history of how I grew up. I have three other brothers. I wrestled from the age of 4 years old. And my brothers and I always had our own entrepreneurial ventures ever since I can remember. So that was kind of like what I was excited about as a kid. And it was always different ventures, but I love running a business, if you could call it that. and so yeah, I went to wrestle at Michigan State, and I actually got married after my fourth year at Michigan State to my wife Megan, and we have two kids now. We have a 5-year-old Noah and a 2-year-old Levi, and they're a little crazier than I am, so I have to watch out once they get older. But I guess from a business side, at least, I started Vade Nutrition right before I graduated. So I was actually going to be I had a couple of different opportunities. One was to work as a wealth management financial advisor at Plant Moran. And I accepted that job, and then I ended up turning that down to go into the athletic ministry on campus, actually at Michigan State. And then I turned that down to start Vade Nutrition and never looked back. So that's what I'm doing now.
Nice. Oh, that's awesome. That's great. So as an MSU, and you graduated from finance from MSU, as I understand, correct?
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep.
So how has your career in MSU prepared you for like business and life and to Vade Nutrition?
Yeah, it's funny because I changed my degree, I think 9 times when I was in college.
Okay.
I ended in finance. Once I switched to finance, I didn't switch away from it. But I came in with a lot of passion, a lot of different areas. But I felt like it was actually something that really equipped me to actually start a business after I graduated, because I had a lot of experience in different classes and all that, but then mostly I would say on the finance side of things, obviously you need to know finance to be able to run a business well, but also I feel like it helped me teach myself, not just like learning how to take a test and get a good score, but teach myself how to learn. I would say that was probably the most valuable thing I learned.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So how did Vade Nutrition come to be? Like, what was the idea? What was the whole process where you were like, that would be cool? And like, what was the process of developing the product?
Yeah, so it's actually a pivot of multiple different companies. When I started Vade Nutrition, it was actually called Pro Bottle, so totally different. But the concept I came up with was a bottle. Won't get into too many of the details, but a bottle that essentially you have inserts that that you can put in the shaker bottle, so that your shaker bottle never gets dirty, because I was wrestling and traveling all the time. So I was always taking my powder with me, and I had tubs in the car. There's powder everywhere. My shaker bottle was always dirty. So it was in my nature to try to think of something to solve a problem that nobody had solved yet. But then we started thinking like, okay, well, what if we stacked the inserts and had powder, like protein powder, already measured in the bottom of the insert? And then we realized that if you stack them, then the powder will get on the bottom of the insert. And so then we thought, well, let's put some type of barrier there. And then we thought, well, why not just pre-measure a whole serving of protein powder and wrap it in this barrier, or make it a food grade barrier, so it's just a pack that dissolves in water. And that was the light bulb moment that kind of changed from we're not going to sell shaker bottles. We're gonna start a nutrition company, and we're going to pre-measure every serving of whatever nutritional supplement it is in a dissolvable food grade film. And that was when we decided to just dive in head first, and go for it.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. And like, what goes like to the manufacturing of that with like the food grade film, and like, how did that whole process work with finding someone who would do it and all of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, honestly, it was a very difficult process, a lot more difficult than maybe I anticipated. From the time that we had the idea and started developing it to when we started selling product was, I want to say, about a year and a half.
Wow.
And after that, we had to stop selling product because of issues. And we tried to launch, I think, 3 times, and had issues each time. So even from the development of the idea to the manufacturers and the partnerships, I would honestly say it's still a process. That's the nature of growing as a company, is there's always going to be a process of perfecting. But the initial product development was really tough to get anybody to believe that I could actually do it, from a manufacturer side. But that was a fun part. That was definitely a fun part of developing everything.
No, it's awesome. That's really, really cool. So this is probably the thing. So many people might recognize your name because you appeared on Shark Tank a few years back, and people might know about the Vade Nutrition name because of that as well. But what was your experience with like preparing for that pitch, like appearing in front of these huge people who could potentially like fund your company? Like, what was that like?
Well, it was a long process. It wasn't an overnight thing. It's probably about 6 months of prep.
Wow.
It's the process. They say it's confidential, but I mean, sort of. It's like you do a live audition, and then there's video calls, there's documentation you're signing. It was probably about six months of preparation, and a lot of the weeks were close to 40-hour weeks of whatever it was. But I think that was really helpful, actually, for us to prepare for it. In addition to what they were giving us, we watched every single episode of Shark Tank ever, and wrote down every question that they asked. And then we typed out our answers to every question that they had ever asked. So then we knew, if they asked a question that we didn't have on there, that would be one of the few, and so we wrote them all down, we memorized them all, and kind of made things less nerve-wracking. Not to say that they weren't, but it was exciting preparing for it, for sure.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. And then when you when you pitched, you got offers. Like, did those offers end up going through, or can you talk about that, or like how that ended up happening?
Yeah, again, that is confidential by the nature of how that works. But I will say that A-Rod, he was one of the sharks that went in. He's been just a great resource for me as a person, outside of everything else. Always available. And that's been something I guess people don't really think about as much. Like, everybody asks about the that experience that happened back then. But it's cool that it wasn't just like a fake just exposure. You meet these like celebrities once and that's it. So, it's still surreal to me in a lot of ways.
No, it's super cool, especially when you like have like one of the best baseball players in history who happens to be a major entrepreneur who's like just available for you, like to be a mentor to you. That's really, really cool. I didn't realize that does happen. That's awesome. So, what would you say are the most important qualities of an entrepreneur?
Well, I think it depends on the stage of entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Because, for instance, the stage of entrepreneurship that we're in right now, I'm learning a lot of different qualities I didn't necessarily need in the first 3 years of entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
But like from the very beginning, I think determination is maybe an overused term, but like knowing that things are going to go wrong and like being ready to work through it. I think that the most common thing that I see is in entrepreneurs or entrepreneurial ventures is quitting too early, and seeing something that they thought was a good idea. I mean, it's important to know when it's a bad idea. I guess I'd say like determination and the ability to be flexible and pivot. So like even with how our company started, it was a shaker bottle idea.
Yeah.
And so not just being determined and saying, oh, we're going to keep doing this. Like, no, we're not going to veer off. When something is better, or you have an idea, to change something, it might be difficult and like it might hurt to like make a big change. But I think that's really important, especially in the beginning stages. And, even now, there's always changing environment in advertising, marketing, and whatever it is. So learning how to, instead of saying, okay, well, this was everything and now it doesn't work, we're screwed, instead thinking, okay, now what do we do instead?
Right. No, that's super interesting, because like when you hear people talk about like the entrepreneurial mindset, a lot of times I feel like, because you kind of touched on adaptability, right? Like I feel like that's something that people like they talk about it, but maybe not enough, because there's a company at school, one of the founders is doing, and he went through like multiple iterations of the product before it even came to market. So I feel like the whole just adaptability aspect is super important. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So what would you say that being an entrepreneur has taught you personally? Kind of going off the same question, but what have you learned from like your whole experience?
Yeah, I mean, I love it. For one, I've found what I'm passionate in, and so that's cool. I mean, I felt like I always wanted to do this, but it's just an honor to be able to actually live it out and be passionate about what I'm doing. I also think it's taught me how to actually be a good leader.
Yeah.
I've definitely, that's probably the thing I've learned the most, especially with entrepreneur. Like, I do think I have an entrepreneurial mindset, but with that sometimes comes the feeling of I need to do everything myself. And so as we've grown, learning how to lead a team that's all doing a bunch of different things, that's been really cool and difficult to start. And I think that's where I would love to continue to grow, but I feel like I've been growing in that.
Definitely. No, that's great. And so what would you say to other people who are kind of considering like maybe a similar path or just a path of entrepreneurship in general? Like what would be your general advice for them?
Yeah, I mean, I would say a lot of the things that we've been talking about are things I would tell somebody starting. There's going to be a lot of reasons to want to quit.
Yeah.
You've got to be flexible to change. You've got to be ready to pivot and to adapt to changes.
Yeah.
There is a fine line between quitting because it's difficult and quitting because it will not work. And so, knowing that, like, being open-minded, but determined. And then as you grow, I would say by far the most important thing is building a team of people around you that are better than you are at whatever they're doing. And knowing that they're better than you are too.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Yeah, definitely.
I guess, and the last thing would be like, to never stop learning.
Yeah.
Whether that's like reading books or just, podcasts or whatever it is. It's easy to just get caught into your silo of whatever you're doing, but it's super essential to never stop learning when you're in an environment where everything is always new. That's been really helpful for me, and that's definitely something I would tell anybody that is passionate about starting up a business.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So we kind of like talked about the subject a little bit beforehand when you were on Shark Tank and stuff like that, but obviously one of the biggest parts of the competition is that you have to pitch yourself. You have to make yourself you have to put on kind of like the persona that like, hey, like I have something really awesome to offer. And what would you say, like, as wealth managers, as potential financial planners, like we have to establish trust with our clients, and that's super important. So in a way, pitching yourself is a super important component, especially when you're starting like the first few client meetings and whatever. So what would you say are the most important like things about pitching yourself that maybe you've learned from preparing for your Shark Tank pitch, or just whatever, like just about pitching yourself in general?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. We talked about the preparation, which obviously is important. I think it's more important than people give credit to, though, because a lot of times, I mean, you'll see it on Shark Tank, but you see it in business and in general. A lot of times people rely on their wit or their personality, and they are not as prepared as they thought they were. So the way that I feel like we prepared for Shark Tank, and how I try to prepare for most meetings, is to prepare enough that I can be myself.
Gotcha.
Because if I'm not prepared enough, then I'm thinking about the questions. I'm thinking about, is this going well? Instead of allowing myself to kind of be free and not worry about the questions, and have it be natural. And so we were really focused on having fun in there, and starting with something that gave them a good vibe, you could say.
Yeah, definitely.
They're fun because we knew we could prove we knew what we were doing.
Yeah.
But people invest in people.
Yeah.
People invest in people first. And that's really important. So yeah, I mean, to summarize, I would be prepared enough that you could be yourself and have fun with it, like actually have genuine, like it was fun. It was an experience that you've seen it go wrong for a lot of people. So
yeah,
we were hopeful and thankful that it went really well for us. But I do think it was because they got into a lighthearted mood at the beginning. And I really do always try to do that with any meetings that I have, because everybody's just people, and they want to be, smiling and having a good time. So loosen up a little bit.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no, I was actually thinking about that yesterday. Like, you could have the best product ever, but if you can't work with that person, it's not really going to go anywhere. So you really do have to, like, working with people is such an important characteristic in building that trust. So the other thing that people might not know is that you were on the wrestling team at Michigan State, and you're actually the captain, correct?
Yep.
Yes, that's awesome. So, how were you able to balance like athletics and careers and school and all of that other stuff? Like, how did you get through that?
Yeah. Well, for one, so when I was growing up, I was homeschooled for a lot of my most of my childhood until my sophomore year of high school. But I had learned a lot about, teaching myself and being like internally motivated. And so a lot of that carried over, I think, with being able to kind of handle a lot on my plate, which has continued to be helpful with handling a lot on my plate nowadays as well.
Yeah.
But no, it was very difficult. I loved every second of it. I've always been very motivated to, be the best that I can be, but set difficult goals.
Yeah.
And that's one thing maybe I would add to some of the questions that you've asked about advice to other people is goal setting is huge. And so, I mean, even in school, I have pretty severe ADHD, and in high school, I really just didn't think I was I thought I was just slow,
Yeah.
and so then in college, I I figured out how to deal with it, and I realized, oh, I can do this. And so then I set a goal to get a 4 to graduate with a 4.0, and I did, and it was I mean, doesn't matter because I didn't even get a job with anybody else, but the mindset was really helpful to like know, if I wouldn't have set that goal, there's no way it wouldn't have mattered. So
Yeah.
yeah, goal setting I think is how I managed to get through all that and enjoy it.
Yeah, no, I could totally attest to that. Goal setting is just something that really helps me to get through a lot of like what I gotta do as well. So but yeah, so so as like aspiring financial planners, as we're about to graduate, any just general advice you have for like us about who are about to graduate and start our careers?
Yeah, well, now that I said set goals, that's one, set goals.
Yeah, right, right.
Yeah, I think set goals and try to gain as much experience as you can.
Yeah,
Um, there's a lot of different, even within wealth management, like there's just so many different things you could do.
yeah,
And it's a lot more difficult to try a bunch of things as the older you get.
yeah,
And so, yeah, I would say just like try to gain as much experience as you can, and and set goals that are difficult to set, and never stop learning too.
for sure.
I think learning is like learn things that are. I never like listen to audiobooks or anything. I don't read. I just listen.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I always tell people I read books. I don't read books. I just listen to books.
yeah.
Um, but they've taught me so many things that are related to what I'm doing, but not what I'm doing.
Yeah,
And I just feel like it's extremely important for any career for you to understand like different areas of business, and even like if you're having a meeting with somebody but you've read a book that like explains how to interact with people that are like that, or whatever it is. I think that's just
yeah,
it's super valuable to continue learning after you graduate.
for sure. For sure. Joe, thank you so much for being on. It was absolute pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you like what you just heard, please like, comment, and share. This is Lance Mullen, producer of the MSU WMA podcast. MSU WMA, or Michigan State University Wealth Management Association, is a student organization part of the Eli Broad College of Business, located in East Lansing, Michigan. Our mission is to inspire and educate the next generation of financial planners. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed, please check out our channel on all platforms such as Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and check out our social media at MSUWMA and MSUWMA.com.